Still eating dinner, still drinking. I got a COVID booster and a flu shot pumping through my body right now. I had a long ass week. Not exactly sure who I am anymore, but that's okay. I'm ready. Let's do a podcast because we're off next week for the holidays, and so we got stuff to talk about. All right.
Yep.
So we were going to talk about the Pathfinder stuff. But I feel like everybody kind of covered the Pathfinder stuff pretty well. Like, there's a lot of people talking about the Pathfinder stuff. And I'm going to be honest, I don't feel qualified to talk about the Pathfinder stuff. I barely knew the last Pathfinder stuff. So, I mean, is it really a big change for me? If they could turn around and they're like, hey, you know those rules that you totally don't have memorized yet? We changed them. I'm like, that's cool. I didn't have them memorized anyways. So I don't know how much of a reaction I could have really provided to the new rules, because I didn't really care about the old rules that much. So, like, from what I understand, they're all good. So, all right. So then we asked the server what we should talk about, and the loudest voice, the squeakiest wheel, seemed to be prepping for a new campaign. And I was asking Dom before we started the vodcast, why was that like the thing that they wanted? And you pointed out to me that I announced my games for next year, and I've already started prepping for those games because I'm a slow reader, and one of the adventures is 700 pages long. So hopefully I have it read in time. The squeakiest wheel butler log is in chat. Yes, who led the charge of all the squeaky wheels, the animated objects banned in the world document. So, I made an outline on my lunch break of what I think my process is. It's a pretty involved process, I came to realize, and I'm not trying to pat my own back or toot my own horn or more vulgar terms, but like, I have completed a lot of games, both as a DM, and I've had the opportunity, thanks to Dom and a couple other DMs, to finish some campaigns, and that feels pretty good. So in the past, as a military kid who lived in an age without the internet, or without good internet, we couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'd start a campaign, there's so many adventures just left unfinished, so many campaigns left mid-story. They just fell apart, as things do sometimes. Projects fall apart, jobs fall apart, companies go out of business. What's a blockbuster? You know what I'm saying? Like, but now we have the tools. If you have the will, there is the tools. Like, if you have the tenacity, you can make your campaign go the distance, right? So, I feel pretty qualified to say what I think are good techniques for prepping for a campaign. I am curious if my techniques overlap with Dom's, and maybe I could learn something from Dom. So, since I did my homework, I'm going to present first, and then Dom, you can, you can just copy off my work and just tell me what was different for you. That's just
okay.
Like, yeah, that's
all
just
right.
Because you got a busier job right now. You know what I'm saying? I'm just training my, I'm mentoring 2 new employees, so, I had a little bit of time. So, all right. Outline of the steps to prep for a new campaign. Here we go. First, I say, is it face-to-face, which I've learned is called F2F. All right, I didn't know that. I
just call it in person.
Yeah, well, in person, right? I am very weird person. I call it IRL because, like, the internet's apparently not real. And being around the flesh sacks of other humans is real. So I call it, hey, what's up? We got Doctor in the chat. I call it IRL. I've been corrected that calling it IRL makes me sound like a crazy person, and also that the cool way to do it, and I haven't heard anyone say this, so maybe I don't know any cool people, is F2F, face-to-face. I feel like that's something they tried to make catch on during Pando, and it didn't catch on. I think it's just called in person now. Anyways, what infrastructure do you need, right? This is a big question that people don't think about. A lot of people just think, I want to run a game, right? That's what they think. Like, I want to run a game. And, like, that's great. That's great. Matt Colville told you to do it. You got excited about it. He told you you could do it as long as you believed in yourself, and you did, and you're ready to do it. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it than that. It's like people being like, I want to have a baby. It's like, okay, but what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do about it? I mean, it's pretty easy to make a baby, if you know what I mean. But, like, what are you going to do with the baby once it gets there? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's pretty easy to decide to run a campaign. But if you don't got the infrastructure in place, that campaign, it ain't going to last, right? So you gotta make sure you got the infrastructure. For an in-person game. Transportation. Nobody thinks about this kind of stuff. Where's the venue at? Is there enough space for all the people that you want to have? Are you trying to live out your Critical Role fantasy and have 7 people in your group? Like, where are they going to sit? Do you have a big enough table? If you got everybody sitting on, like, folding chairs around one card table, that's not a good time. If you got everybody in different parts of your couch in your living room, they're going to get cozy and fall asleep. They're not going to be paying attention. Like, do you have good circulating air? Because some people get kind of sick being in a small, closed-in room with a bunch of other people, like, breathing the same air and stuff like that. Like, all of that. What time of day is it going to be? Do you need food? Who's going to pay for the fucking food? Is everybody chipping in? Is everybody supposed to bring their own food? Who's catering this bitch? And then, materials. Are you trying to live out your Critical Role fantasies? Who's paying for the Dwarven Forge? Who's painting the miniatures? You got maps? You got a dry erase board? Is it going to be Theater of the Mind? Are you playing with gummy bears? Like, what is the infrastructure? Like, how are people getting to the event? How long are they going to be at the event? Are you feeding them? In-person D&D is a thing. It's like an event. It's not just sitting down at the computer and you're good to go. So before you jump the gun and be like, oh yeah, baby, let's do it. We'll just play at my house. Really think hard about this. Like, do you have the things to make this a good experience? If it's not a good venue, if it's not easily accessible, it ain't gonna last. Nobody wants to drive 45 fucking minutes to your house to play Dungeons & Dragons once a week, especially if there's bad weather, bad traffic, you're not providing any food. You gotta have a good infrastructure. So then we hop online. Same deal. What platform are you gonna be on? Do you know how to use that platform? Right? Oh, well, I'll just use Roll20. Do you know how to use Roll20? Do you know enough about Roll20 to help your players use Roll20? Because if you've got people who can't figure it out, you're not going to get to play. Every session is going to be tech support. What about system requirements? You invited all your friends to play. Can they even log in to the fucking program? You see us playing on Foundry and you think that's the cool thing to do and you're going to play on Foundry. Let me tell you, they got to have a pretty decent computer. They can't be using no hand-me-down computer. They can't be using grandma's old computer. They've got to have a decent computer to be playing on Foundry. And even then, it's a pain in the ass sometimes. So you got to make sure the tech needs are met. What about headphones and microphones? You can't be playing no 400 hours of Dungeons & Dragons with someone with a crackly mic. You can't be playing with a bad echo in the background. And etiquette. You don't want to be playing Dungeons & Dragons with baby crying in the background, with Pupperino howling in the background. You don't want to deal with all that shit. There's a lot to it that nobody thinks about. When you go to run a game, if you don't have a good foundation and a good venue, whether it's in real life or online, that game is not going to do well. You need to have a good, stable foundation, or your campaign is gonna suck. No matter how good of a DM you are, no matter how cool of a story you're telling, no matter how great your tokens are, your maps, no one cares if they're uncomfortable or if nothing works reliably. Whew. I had to get that off my chest. I've joined a lot of games where I immediately was just like, I'm fucking done. Like, I'm not going to do this. Like, this guy's wife is yelling at him in the background the whole time. This one's got a baby crying. The DM keeps leaving to walk the fucking dog. Like, what the fuck? I'm the only dog you need to walk, son. Right here. Walk this dog through the adventure. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't even give me 2.5 fucking hours? Get the fuck out of here. I set aside time for your shit. You didn't set aside time for my shit? That doesn't work for me. Alright, so after you've established that you probably aren't equipped to run a good Dungeons & Dragons campaign, you need to fix your life. So, come back later after you've fixed your life and made better friends. So now that you have better friends and a more stable life, now we move on to the next step. Choose... Oh, wait. I gotta see what chat has to say here. Many people also don't know about, like, voice over internet etiquette of not talking when someone else does. And it's worse than in person. Agreed. People frequently not coming back from the break in time because they went to do the laundry. Yeah, no, I've seen all this shit. So there's a lot there that has nothing to do with actually prepping the campaign that is still, in my opinion, prepping the campaign. This is all, in my opinion, prepping the game. If you don't have a good environment to run the campaign in, it's already a failure. All right, now you got to choose a game system. How familiar are the players with the system? I'm making the assumption that you yourself are already familiar with the system, as you will see in a future item. But how familiar are the players? You need to consider this when you are deciding which adventure to run, when you are deciding what kind of adventure you want to make, right? If it's a bunch of noobs, you probably don't want to make the coolest, hardest Dark Souls-inspired game you've ever run. You probably want to do a little softball pitch there, get them into the game, kind of figure things out. Maybe it's a 2-part campaign. Starts a little easy. When you see that they've got the legs underneath them, kind of kick it up a little bit. What? Oh, yeah? What you got?
No, I'm agreeing.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the follow. What sort of game are you going to run? So I've identified 3 kinds of games. Pre-written game, completely homebrew game, and procedural game. Now, procedural game is old school. Ooh. This is like an old school West Marches style game where your prep, it's actually a lot of prep to run a procedural game. You have to go and build the world. There's no story. There's no plot. You create a place, and then random tables tell the story. So you create a region to explore, and whatever happens, happens. And that can actually be an incredibly fun campaign, and a very awesome opportunity to develop your improvisational skills and your storytelling skills, and just sort of like seat of your pants, just like deal with whatever comes your way. So that's what I've identified as the 3 types of games. Now, within those, of course, there are genres, right? So combat heavy, role play heavy, intrigue, mostly storytelling, mostly crunchy. All of that's going to be influenced more by the game system that you choose than what sort of game it is. Also, I consider pre-written to be somewhat homebrew because I don't know too many DMs that, like a robot, will literally run exactly what's in the book. Like, they are going to adapt a little bit. But completely homebrew. Yeah, completely homebrew implies you did not purchase anything from anywhere else. Everything is just from you. This is the story that you came up with that you want to tell. All right, so once you decide what kind of game you want to prep, understand the rules of that system. I'm not fucking around here. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't get your friends together and play some tabletop. I'm not trying to tell you that. But I am telling you that if you decide to be the referee, the game master, the dungeon master, the storyteller, whatever the system calls it, if you have decided to do that, you have stepped up and taken it upon yourself to be the friend at board game night that reads the rule book. Okay? You have chosen to read the rule book. You need to be the one who knows the rules better than everyone else at the table. Why is that? That is because you want, when you're running the game, to have all of your energy available to run the game, to roleplay the NPCs, to run an exciting combat, to make sure things are happening the way that they're written in either the adventure or in the notes for your homebrew adventure. You need to be able to answer the questions the players have about the game, about the world, without having to stop and look everything up every 5 minutes. That is going to ruin the flow of your game. The better you know the rules, the more comfortable you are with the system, the smoother it's going to go and the better it's going to feel for everybody at the table. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to run it. No one's going to stop you, but I think you will do a better job with everything if you are proficient in the rule set that you're trying to use.
So you're saying the more prepared you are, the better?
Yes. This is another type of prepping for the adventure. We haven't even opened the adventure yet. Look at all the prepping that we've done. We haven't even opened the adventure yet. So there's that. This is even more true if you are running something completely homebrewed. Because again, like, you want to be able to focus on telling the story and building the world as you go. You don't want to have to spend so much time looking everything up and dealing with contested rules and everything like that. Check. And here's another thing. Now that you've got all this assembled and you've told yourself, you know what? I know the system. I love the system. I got an adventure picked out. And I've got a place that I could run it. I got all the things. I'm ready. Now, see if anyone actually wants to play with you. Check to see if there's any interest in the game that you're planning to run. Now, there is a global shortage of Dungeon Masters. There's a global shortage of Dungeon Masters. They're so hard up for Dungeon Masters, they're trying to get AI to replace us. You know, cue the Invincible meme where we look over at the Jets and we say, look at what they have to do to get a fraction of our power, kind of thing, right? Like, people want DMs. People are actually paying for DMs because there's not a lot of DMs out there, right? I can't believe people would pay for DMs. It's crazy. But they are. They're paying for DMs. It's wild. So, there's a good chance that you'll find somebody for your group. Like, somebody will want to play your adventure. But honestly, especially if it's homebrew, I would float it past the communities that you're in. Make sure that there is an interest in the game. Make sure that more people are interested in your game than you need. Because people are going to drop a week before, 2 weeks before, 2 days before, 2 sessions in. They're going to drop out of the campaign. So if you want and need 3 players, you should probably make sure that at least 6 people are interested. Like, that's kind of my thing. Because maybe they say they're interested, and then by the time you're done prepping, they're not interested anymore. So, like, definitely get a feel. Like, and the weirder your homebrew campaign is, the more I am trying to tell you, make sure that people would actually want to play this with you. If I'm like, yeah, remember that Wendy's campaign setting where, like Burgerland and you work for Queen Wendy, like, remember that? I want to run a 2-year campaign in Wendy's Burger Land. Everyone's burger, people. You have to use this supplement. That's the rules. Is there anyone interested? Right? Like, I don't want to spend a shitload of time prepping this incredible Wendy's Hamburger Land campaign, and then nobody wants to play in it. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So the more niche and the weirder your game is, the more I'm going to encourage you. This ain't Field of Dreams. And for you kids that don't know what Field of Dreams is, I guess just look it up. If you build it, they will not just show up, right? Like Field of Dreams told you if you build it, they will come. But that's not true. If it's My Little Ponies, they might not show up. I mean, maybe. It's a pretty good tabletop rule set. I'd play it in My Little Ponies game. Maybe not for 2 years, but I'd play it in My Little Ponies game. So you got to make sure that you have people to play. Otherwise, you're going to be playing with yourself. So, now that we know that there's some people at least interested in this, or we sold out and we picked a very popular adventure like Curse of Strahd or something so that we're guaranteed players. Whew, fucking sellouts doing that shit. We can move on to the actual prepping of the campaign. See this item right here? It says prep the campaign. Prep the campaign. More on this later. So we're going to come back to that. The whole reason that you're here for this vodcast is to prep your campaign. We're not even going to talk about that yet. So this is a how to draw book, and this is where we just say add the details, and then there's a fucking horse. All right, so moving on. Make make your own player's guide. Make your own player's guide. Detail your changes, intentions, goals, and expectations. Oh, what's up? I run 3 games a week, and sometimes I wonder if I want to just play with myself. I found out that there are ways to play with yourself. They're called video games, and I really enjoy doing that when I don't have to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's pretty nice, actually. What was the question?
I will say on the like check for if people are interested in your game. Whenever I've had a campaign idea, I've always done one shots beforehand.
Ooh, that's a good idea too. Show people what you got, you know.
Yeah, like with Monster Hunter, I did the 2 Monster Hunter one shots before we had the Monster Hunter campaign. With Cyberpunk, I had the 2 Cyberpunk one shots before I did the Cyberpunk campaign, and now I've done 2 Pathfinder one shots, and then I was starting to prep a Pathfinder game, and so that's one good way to like see if people are interested. And like make sure the game you're one-shotting is actually a game that's similar to what you're planning to do for your homebrew or your whatever campaign you're planning to do. And I would say the best thing to do is always just manage expectations. When you have somebody joining for a one-shot, let them know that, hey, I'm trying this out because I'm planning to do a campaign later, and I just want to see if people, what people think.
Yeah.
So, and that's a good way to see if you can check interest in your game.
And
it's really easy to join a one shot than it is to decide to make it a commitment to a campaign.
And you're checking your own interest too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like maybe you run that Steampunk Cowboy one shot and you're like, wow, I hate Steampunk Cowboys and Pathfinder. What the hell was I thinking? And then you don't prep the campaign. You're just like, forget that shit. All right. So I think that every DM, every game master needs to make their own player's guide. So what does this mean? You got to detail your changes, intentions, goals, and expectations. I'm also going to throw homebrew rules and expectations. People need to know this up front. People need to know this up front. It doesn't matter if the campaign has its own player's guide. You need to provide your player's guide. Maybe the player's guide for your campaign is poorly written and full of lies, like Odyssey of the Dragon Lords. I probably should have written my own player's guide that went in and said, this section here, that's wrong. This is how it actually is. This section here, that's right. We're going to use this. Instead, I just was like, I guess, read this player's guide. I don't know. One of my biggest regrets of Odyssey of the Dragon Lords is that I didn't write my own player's guide for it, and I relied on the shitty player's guide that they provided for the adventure, because it was a hot garbage. So yeah, like just because the adventure has one doesn't mean you shouldn't write one. So then we've got post up the ad. Oh, I guess ad is just 1D. Post up the ad for your game with the player guides. So if there's an official player's guide, oh, thank you. If there's an official player's guide, make sure you link that. If there is and then link your player's guide as well as part of the ad. Give them as much information as you can up front so they can make an informed decision. You do not want people getting the wrong idea about what you're running, and then they are a bad fit for the group, and they make life hard for everyone, or they just bail on you, right? Because that's a spot you could have given to someone that actually would have been interested, and maybe they didn't know if they were interested or not because you didn't provide enough information in the ad for the game. All right, create a group that you think will work well together. If you are unsure of player behavior and dynamics, take the time to interview them, which is Cryptid's thing. Is you apply for one of his games, you get like a 60 to 90 minute like phone sex session basically. It's not sex, but like his voice is very sexy. So he's just like, "So I hear you like telling stories, playing Dungeons and Dragons. We could play it together if you tell me what's your fantasy," which is to say fantasy character. And then you do this whole thing with him, and by the time he's done, he gets a sense of like, oh yeah, this person would be good in this group because they're into this kind of stuff. If you don't have good interview skills, you will get them if you DM long enough, but also consider Dom's suggestion, run a one-shot. Run a couple of one-shots, and then try out the players, mix them up, see who plays well together. Yeah. So then we've got, let's see, schedule a session 0. So if you haven't already gotten all the information out front in your interviews, your ads, your player's guide, all that, the session 0 is there to cover everything else. The trigger warnings, the political correctness. Is there anything offensive in your campaign? Is it about colonialism? You probably need to talk about that because some people, that makes them very upset, even if it's the #1 Pathfinder adventure of all time. Like they might be pretty upset about the fact that they're a bunch of colonials. So you need to make sure that you're talking about it. Is there slavery in this? You know, like Baldur's Gate 3, everybody loves it, but then there's also like a lot of fantasy racism in it. Some people are like, I just can't play it. There's too much fantasy racism. So you need to get a sense of like what people are going to be able to handle. You might lose some people in that session 0 and have to go back to the drawing board before you can start the campaign. That's okay. You need to make sure that people know up front what is in store, what everyone's expectations are, and if those people cannot find a common ground, they need to find a different game, right? Because you have already prepped the campaign, you have already advertised the campaign, and you've done your due diligence to put everything up front, right? Then you start the campaign. And in order to keep the campaign going, you got to communicate well. You've got to continue to share and meet expectations, and you have to stay consistent in everything that you do. That means don't cancel your game all the fucking time. Like, don't cancel your game all the time. You could run an average game, and if you don't cancel any sessions, it will be a great game. It will be a great game. I would much rather have an average dungeon master that runs the fucking game every week than an exceptional dungeon master who cancels on me more than 50% of the time. Like, I think most people would. We're all busy nowadays. We carve out time for the hobby. You wait all week for this, and then you find out there's no game. That's terrible. And that it just erodes the foundation of the game. So consistency is the key to kind of keeping that going. All right, but we never actually talked about how to prep the campaign. This is all prepping, but it's not prepping the campaign. So other than the actual prepping process, here in this peripheral shit, did I miss anything, Dom?
I don't think so. Part of that session, like I guess part of the relationship between the session 0 and that make your own player's guide, there's really good overlap there, and you can save a lot of time in a session 0 with a very good uh, like you make a player guide about your game rather than the campaign. If you know what I mean, like about how you run at the table. What do you expect from players? What lay out your expectations for yourself. Like if you like with when I was running Cyberpunk and I made the player's guide for that one, I let everybody know that hey, this is gonna be my third time ever running this system.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's gonna be a lot of times we're gonna stop and figure out rules. And if you want to help with that, that's fine too. I'll be glad to for you guys to like. If I get something wrong, let me know. But this is when you're joining this. This is what you're getting into. You're getting into a game where we're all going to be learning the system together. Yeah. And the expectations and consistency are really good. Really important things about starting and running a campaign.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, what about the actual prep of the campaign? So we go right to the middle here. In between making your player's guide and checking for interest is the actual prepping of the campaign. What does that look like? This is what it looks like for me. Read the whole adventure. All right? It's like on the Boondocks. You know what I'm saying? When they're holding the book and they're shoving the book in the guy's face. Like, you got to read. You got to read it. Read the adventure. Don't lie to yourself. Don't say, I only need to read the first part and then I'll keep reading after we start the campaign. Don't do that to yourself.
No.
Do not do that to yourself. Just read the fucking adventure. If you don't want to read the adventure, don't do a pre-written campaign. If you don't want to read the adventure, do not do a pre-written campaign. Do not make excuses. I will not listen to them. You need to read the fucking adventure. That is your responsibility. If you are running a pre-written campaign, read the adventure. That is step one. If you can't read the adventure, you don't deserve to run the adventure. I'm sorry. That's the truth. And if you suck at reading, there are screen readers that can read PDFs to you. So if you struggle with reading, there are screeners that can do that. Orf and I both love having things read to us. One, because we always have things in our hands that are moving around and we're busy and we can't just sit down and read. And for me at least, it's because I'm a terrible reader. So like having it read to me is great. So there are tools nowadays that can make this an easier process. There is no excuse. Read the adventure. So while you're reading the adventure, take notes. Take notes. Just like you're in school. I know it's horrible. If you don't like this stuff, don't run a pre-written adventure. Get out of here. Like you make up your own shit. That's fine. So take notes as you read the adventure. What you want to keep an eye out for is cool things. You want to keep track of the cool things. You want to make sure this stuff happens. If there's a part of the adventure where you're like, holy shit, that sounds cool. Yeah, well, make sure that shit happens. Like, move it somewhere else if it needs to so you don't miss out on it. Like, if there's like some cool stuff that you want to see, you make sure that you get to see it. All right? Don't let it get missed out on. Like, you deserve to have fun too. So anything that you're reading that you're like, God, this sounds amazing, try to make sure it happens. You know what I'm saying? A little social engineering. You know, a couple of hero points, inspiration points here and there. You know, kind of guide them in the right direction. Worst case scenario, just move it to where you need it to be. Lame stuff. If you're listening to Adventure and you're like, that sounds terrible, that's dumb, take note of it. Because, get this, I'm going to blow your mind. You don't have to use it. You can just change it. So, if there's some really dumb stuff where you're like, I hate that. Or if I was a player, I would be like, what the hell are you thinking? Or, I think this is going to TPK my level 2 party. Why would I send 12 shadows against a level 2 party? That doesn't seem like a good idea. Why would a written adventure tell me to do this? You can be like, hey, wait a minute. I'm not going to do it. You know, swap it out for something else. Drop the encounter. You are in control. Just because it's a pre-written adventure doesn't mean you have to do everything that's written in the adventure. Problematic elements. As an Odyssey DM, I can tell you, there's a lot of problematic stuff in Greek mythology. Maybe we shouldn't have teenage orgy. Maybe we shouldn't have infanticide. You know, maybe we shouldn't have so much incest. As I'm reading through the adventure, I might be like, I don't know. Some of the people that said they were interested in this adventure, I don't know if they're going to be okay with this stuff. So I'm gonna take note of these things, and we're gonna talk about them in the session 0, right? I'm gonna take note of these things, and we're gonna talk about it in session 0. Everyone says after session 0, they're gonna say, yeah. So there's this scene where this the bad guy makes everybody turns half the people into animals, and then she has the other people hump those animals in the butt. Is that? I mean. That's the kind of stuff you're going to be dealing with this campaign. And they're going to be like, whoa, I signed up for an ancient Greek campaign, but I didn't sign up for this. And you're like, okay, so I guess we'll drop that part. That's fine. Yeah.
Skull Shackles crew. Like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and then Skull Shackles crew is like, that's my character? What are you talking about? So, confusing parts. If you are reading it and you're like, what are they talking about? Or you're reading it and you're like, why would they get a luck blade? Doesn't a luck blade give them wishes? That seems like it would be very bad for my campaign. Are we sure about this? Guess what? The internet exists, and there's a lot of people that want to share their opinions with you. So go to the internet and say, name of campaign, why luck blade? And then people will say, don't do it, it ruined my campaign. It's the dumbest thing ever. Or they'll say, well, if you do the luck blade, what I did is I put an evil genie inside the luck blade to screw up all the wishes, and so on and so forth. So, like, there's things you can do when you encounter things that you're like, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? So, like, don't be afraid to question the written adventure. Right? You've already judged the adventure. Now you're questioning the adventure, right? And then not enough detail. So they say, well, in this part of the adventure, that's a very important part of the adventure, there's no map. Just make it up. Also, in this part of the adventure, that's a very important part of this adventure that we didn't provide a map for, there's, I don't know, make them fight some stuff, but we don't know what they should fight. Anyways, moving on to the next part of the adventure. I've encountered that a lot, where written adventures are like, now have them do this. Okay, do what? What should I have them do? And they're like, stuff. Pirate stuff. Sorry, Skull and Shackles. Have them do pirate stuff for a while. Go online. Be like, hey, I'm running this campaign. What about Spider Mansion? Did anybody have a map for Spider Mansion? Let me tell you, they do. The internet's huge. They have the map you need. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't you make that fucking map until you check online. I've made that mistake. Before. Yeah.
So, a good example of this is actually something that just happened recently. Since I did Rhyme of Frostmaiden like such a while back, I've gotten DMs. Like I made a few maps in Incarnate, and I put them on the Discord. And people have seen the maps even now after years of 2 years I've made them, and like saying like, okay, yeah, I saw an adventure. This place only had a paragraph, and we were supposed to have a fight here, and there was no map. And I saw your map on the thing, but I'm looking at your map and like I see you have these locations. Do you have any ideas of like what you did there? And a lot of times I'll just do a quick answer like, hey, this is what I did. Yeah. And then they move on and they do their thing, and it's pretty helpful, especially when you need to figure out something. Now going back to like the big part of this is about reading the whole adventure, and like while you're reading it, kind of taking notes. One thing I've done, and I've never like sat down and read the adventure from cover to cover. What a lot of times what I'll do is like I'll pick a chapter and like look at the end and see what like the resolution is, and then look at the beginning and like just jump, like not even read it in like sequential, like jump from chapter to chapter just to get the concept and see what maps I need to have. All the big picture stuff. Like I mainly look for all the set pieces, and then I look at how the set pieces connect instead of kind of reading it from cover to cover. Mainly because I'm also a pretty bad reader, and like having the visual aid of and a set piece of like, okay, this is a big thing that's happening. Okay, that's cool. And then I end up getting the curiosity of like, okay, how did they get here? And then I'll go read how
Right,
they
right,
got
right.
there.
And whatever method works for you, but
Yeah.
you do need to hit all the parts of that book. Like you do need
Yes.
to know
Yes.
what's going on in that book. Um, Study the tone. Okay, so what kind of adventure is it? Is it a cowboy adventure? Watch a bunch of westerns. Is it read some western novels? Is it a horror game? Watch some horror movies. Read some spooky books. Video games in the same genre. Give yourself like a crash course in that genre, right? Become immersed in the genre and understand the tone of what you are running. Is it traditional fantasy? That's still a tone. Do you know what I'm saying? Play some Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
Remember what it's like to have fun playing high magic fantasy. Uh, is it lower magic fantasy? Watch some Lord of the Rings. Like remember what low magic fantasy feels like when everyone gets incredibly excited because they have a sword that glows when orcs are around. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, understand the material, the setting, the genre that you are in, and that's gonna make a big difference. Um, Set limits. And this kind of goes on what Dom was saying, that they don't read cover to cover. They take it one chapter at a time, and then they dissect the chapter in the manner that works for them. So don't
I
sit.
will
Yeah,
preface that I will preface that I do that for the entire for all the chapters before. Like I'm still
mhm.
reading the whole adventure.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
don't go from start to finish.
Right, right, right. So
Yeah.
set limits for yourself. Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to sit down on my Saturday, my only day off this week. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read the whole fucking book from cover to cover." Take breaks, even if hyperfocus takes over and you think that you're okay. Take some breaks. Stand up. Rest your eyes. Maybe like hop online, chat to some people about the adventure. Join a Discord server with DMs who have also run the adventure. Like, there's other ways to prep than just reading the adventure and taking notes. Find people on Reddit who said, after 3 years, we just finished our Curse of Strahd game. I'm here to answer any fucking questions you've got. And then the questions that people are going to ask is, how did you make Irenia a lovable enough character that they didn't just get her killed instantly? That's a very popular question. That is a question that
Wow.
I asked many times when I was prepping, because I had heard terrible things happen to that poor girl, and I did not want those terrible things to happen to her. So I was like doing a lot of research in the community, kind of asking those questions. So always look for postmortems, Q&As, things like that. You're going to learn a lot from the people that came before you. And also, set some boundaries for yourself. I'm running a game in Alkenstar in the world of Golarion. Golarion is pretty fucking big. I'm not going to learn about the entire world of Golarion. I'm going to learn about Alkenstar and the two neighboring nations that are a part of the story, and I'm done. I'm done. I'm not learning anything else about Golarion until I have to. How many gods did I learn about? 2. Because there were 2 gods mentioned in the player's guide that were active in the city, and that's all I cared about. So you do have the power to say enough is enough, right? If you put too much energy into the wrong things, you are going to burn out. Faerun, Turil, right? It's fucking huge. If your adventure just takes place on the Sword Coast, there is no shame in only knowing about that part of the Sword Coast. If it's Waterdeep Heist, you only have to know about Waterdeep. You don't have to learn about the entire fucking planet. So please, please, please know that you don't have to know everything just because you're running a pre-written adventure. All right. So let's catch up on chat real quick before we jump into prepping an original campaign from scratch. All right, wow, so it's pretty chatty tonight. Just good, just good. Don't worry, you can just get an AI to play in your Wendy's inspired campaign. More like I'll get an AI to run me through a Wendy's campaign with
There
romance.
was a
With
question. There was a
romance
question
from a
from.
Wendy's. Oh, it was a question.
Yeah. there was a question from Leah about how do you vet players?
Oh, okay.
How do you vet players?
How do I personally vet players? Okay, so how I personally vet players is, if I've never met them before, I try to do an interview. I ask around about them. I spy on them. I look up their social media. I see what kind of shit they post. I basically do everything that a company would do before it hires a person. If you've applied for one of my games, I've invaded your privacy. I have looked you up, and I see if you're the kind of person who posts like racist memes on their Facebook page. Like I'm checking all that shit. Because a lot of times people put their best foot forward when they're applying for something. And I want to see what that person's actually like. I find out what other DMs you've had for other games, and I contact those DMs, and I say, what kind of player was this? Would you have this player in your game before? If all this is shocking to you, I'm sorry. But, yeah, like, I definitely try my best nowadays to do my due diligence. And my perspective on it is this. I have taken on the responsibility of building and managing this group. And if this group is not cohesive, it is going to be a bad time. People are paying me for a good time. People are looking forward to a good time every week. And if that time is ruined because we've got an asshole in the group, that's on me. Because I let the asshole into the group, and then I kept the asshole in the group. So, like, not to be like so blunt about it, but like, yeah, I put in some work. If I am unsure, I will, but I have a good feeling about a player, I will run a free one-shot adventure, and I will have that player in the group, and I will see how they play with some of my veteran players, and also with some of the players that I am curious about. So anytime you guys see me running free one-shots, I'm spying on you guys. So that's what that is. So yeah, that's how I vet players. I feel that Cryptid's method of long interview, I think that is phenomenal, and I should probably do that because it'd probably be less work to do a long interview than it would be to cyberstalk people and then run one shots for them. All of them combined is even better. But asking around, like Cryptid is starting his new group for Spooky Sagi or whatever, and he messaged me because all of his players are also my players, and he said, like, any tips about these players? Like, this is my group composition, and I very transparently said, this person's great, watch out for this. This person's amazing, watch out for this. This person's phenomenal, watch out for this. This person is awesome, watch out for this. And, now he has that information going in, so he knows more about the players. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
I'm wondering what my thing was.
Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, just like people that call for like references, I have had people message me and say, hey, I know so-and-so was in one of your games. They're applying for one of my games. Would you have them in one of your games again? And I've had a couple of times where I'm like, no, I would never have them in one of my games again. And then the person's like, oh my God, like, why wouldn't you have them in your game again? And then I just tell them, this is why I wouldn't have them in the game again. Because I don't want some other group to have to deal with that. Yep. So if you're in one of my games and, you're an asshole, maybe I'll keep you till the end because I talked to the other players. The other players are like, well, they're an asshole, but it's not that bad. You will bear the black mark, like the little circular black dot above your token for the rest of my life, because I'll never forget or forgive. So just keep that in mind. So anyways, that's how I vet players. All right, any other questions? Let's see. Halfway through, please have to say, watching some of the videos, I'm all about doing players' guides. Show the players the guide long before session 0. Should be the first thing they see. Yep. Pathfinder players' guides are pretty all right. They're pretty all right, but they still need the personal touch. You need a personal touch. I'm very pleased with the presentation of written material by Paizo. I don't like their big fat vocabulary words, and I enjoyed Cryptid's read through because he was getting stumped by them fucking big fat vocabulary words, and I was like, man, glad it's not just me getting stumped by them big old vocabulary words. How do you handle campaigns like Ravenloft? So you want to keep a bit of a secret and to build the horror and suspense. Don't want player's guide to give away too much. That's a great question. That is a very nuanced thing, right? How much can you tell without telling too much? In the case of Curse of Strahd, something that I think I failed to do before the game started was to really hammer home like the idea that in this particular adventure, the lives of the characters are less meaningful than they are in other campaigns. It's a horror game, so death is imminent and ever present, and ultimately the story is about Strahd and not about the characters. Now there are DMs and groups that change Curse of Strahd to be about the characters and then Strahd is in the background. But I felt that the intention of the campaign was very much to tell Strahd's story and then how the players and then their player characters are a part of that story and affect that story. And so I honestly think that amount of transparency would not count as spoiling the campaign. It's literally called Curse of Strahd. The dude's on the fucking cover. So yeah, I do think that you don't want to tell them everything, but you do want to kind of explain, like, yeah, this is this very powerful guy, and he's like the main force behind everything in this campaign. So I think that there are things that you could say that wouldn't be too much of a spoiler. Yeah, let's see what else we got. That is what Cryptid, I could confirm word for word. Yep, okay. There is a lot of good background lore for players in the 1E and 2E. I have learned that there are a decent chunk of Pathfinder players that just don't enjoy roleplay being in the game, like at all. Which is fine for whatever game they play in, but like a quick interview would filter them out. Exactly. Yeah, you need to know like what kind of group you're making. Is this a group that is here to crunch numbers? Is it a group that is here to slaughter with the best possible build, or is it a group that is only there to romance? If they're only there to romance, you as the DM probably want to know that. You want to make sure you know that these people are just here for romance. They play Baldur's Gate 3 with mods to remove all combat. It's just a dating simulator. You need to make sure that you are aware going into it what people's expectations are, what they are after in the game, and build a group of like-minded individuals. Yeah, very true. There's a subset that love encounter roleplay, but also want to roll dice. Let's see. If you are running a pre-written adventure, there are communities available. Absolutely. If you can't find one, just make one, says the founder of the Odyssey of the Dragon Lords Discord server. Dr. Robazora says, I really want to make a homebrew Fate Go-based homebrew campaign. Takes notes. Fixing campaigns with bad, pointless areas is literally no player motivation. Absolutely. Yeah, as a DM, you're also a player. If something doesn't sound like it's going to be fun to you, it's probably not going to be fun to the players. So think about removing that from the campaign or changing it. Let's see. There's great JPG with all the tropes and areas Galarian. Let's see. Horror stories. Let's see. Asshole players. Crash tattled on you. No such things. Alright. Hey, Brewdog. Glad to see you still alive, buddy. Me too. Whoa, Biden got rid of your student loans? Oh, man. Congratulations, buddy. That's some big fucking student loans.
Okay.
Yeah, congratulations. Alright. Thanks to great planning 5 years. Alright, so what about prepping an original campaign from scratch? Let's handle that real fast, because we don't want to go too far over the 1 hour mark. So here we go. What story do you want to tell? What story do you want to tell? That's the question you should ask yourself. Yeah. Why aren't you using a pre-written campaign? So, like, there's a lot of adventures out there that someone already did all the work. Do you not like any of those stories? If not, what story are you trying to tell? Like, what story is inside of you that needs to be outside of you ASAP that you're willing to take on this terrible responsibility of running a tabletop RPG? What is the story that you want to tell? First
and I will say I'm part of that. Sometimes it's that you don't want to tell a story; you just want to have a adventure.
That's fair. That's fair. So,
like with like Monster Hunter, like I put a story in the background, but really I just wanted you guys to go out and fight Monster Hunter monsters.
But that was also a story about hunting monsters. It doesn't have to be an award-winning novel. It doesn't have to be the next great epic. It doesn't have to be the original Avatar, animated Avatar series. It could just be the story, right? Like, I want to tell a story about a bunch of cat burglars. Everyone's going to be a cat burglar. We're going to do cat burglar shit. I want to have a ninja. I want to tell a ninja story. I want to have ninjas. I don't exactly know what the ninjas are going to do, but I know it's going to be about ninjas. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever it is, that's fine. In fact, the less married to your story you are, the better things are going to go.
Yeah.
Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, all these other tabletop RPGs, they are not your typewriter. Okay? If you are not willing to give up ownership and control of the story that you're trying to tell to the entire group, you probably shouldn't be running it as a campaign. If you can't be flexible about the telling of your story, that's not the right story to tell in this format. It has to be an idea that you're willing to share and watch it change and grow with everyone. Okay. So, what are some major plot points that could make your story possible, right? So, going to Dom's example, I want to do Monster Hunter. Okay. Well, what do you need for Monster Hunter? You need a base of operation. You need an unexplored island. And you need some monsters. Yep, so he got it all. And, of course, you need an Elder Dragon that's disrupting the local ecosystem so that we have to kill everything because we're not the bad guys. All right. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, Dom goes and adds that shit. He's ready to go. What are some different outcomes that might happen to your story if human players get a hold of it? Right? So what if we were all like, no, we fooled you, Dom. We're not here to fight monsters. We're here to save them. We're gonna rescue all the monsters. We're gonna start a monster resuscitation preserve. We're gonna take all your monsters. No one's allowed to hurt them. We're gonna start our own town on the north side of the island. All the monsters are coming with us. Nobody gets to hurt these monsters anymore. Would you still be okay with that? If the answer is no, then hold on. If the answer is no, it needs to go in your ad for the game. Right? It needs to go in your ad for the game. Yeah, you say you are taking on the role of monster hunters. You are going to kill the fucking monsters. That's what you're going to do. Yeah, so you have to think about that though. Like, what's going to
characters with the motivation of killing monsters?
Of killing monsters, right? Yeah, you have to think about, right, what happens when the humans get a hold of my story, when the other people get a hold of my story. What do I need to do to preserve what's important to me, right? What do I have to do to preserve what's important to me? Then you got to think, how does the story start, right? So Dom went and built an island and a town, and he put monsters on the island, and he put an Elder Dragon that was disrupting the local ecosystem, and he told us all that we were going to play Monster Hunters. And what happened? We all rode on a boat over to this new island, and then we had a little tutorial mission on our way to the town, which became the quest hub, and that's how the campaign got started. And from that point, we were able to branch out and do other things. Now that you have all of the most important things done, you fill in the rest with flexible content. Yeah. And in my opinion, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of a homebrew campaign. Like I said, at the very beginning, if you hate reading, if you can't bring yourself to read the whole damn adventure, run a homebrew adventure. Because all Dom had to do was make up an island with a town, some monsters, and a big bad monster that was making the other monsters upset. He's done. Now he can just start prepping those things, and everything else can be filled in organically as he goes. Because he doesn't have to read. He can kind of look at stuff and say, ooh, well, they're not going to be strong enough to make it to these outer areas yet. So I can focus on this stuff. But if for some reason they get bold enough to go into these other areas, I know that the big elder dragon is there. It'll scare them back to the low-level area or kill them all. So, like, he has a boundary in place to kind of shape and control the campaign as it grows and he builds it. So, question mark, homebrew world. Is it going to be a homebrew world? If it's a homebrew world, you do want to provide a quick travel brochure explaining it. Like one of them old-fashioned, like, trifold travel brochures. Like, welcome to Magma Island. What was the island called? Molten Cay. Welcome to Molten Cay. And then it says, we have desert, we have forest, we have mountain. We have ravine. We have coastline. And then it kind of explained, like, it's a newfound island and this and the other thing. So you want to at least be able to describe it as well as somebody could describe a vacation destination, right? Like, if it's a homebrew world. But that's it. You don't have to provide a 500-page source book. You don't have to provide a world map even. You don't even have to have all that stuff. You can say, my adventure takes place in Elser Vale. Elser Vale is this little tiny shithole in the middle of nowhere. There's Frozen Kingdom to the north. There's Desert Kingdom to the south. There's Coastal Kingdom to the east. And there's Unexplored Forest to the west. And that's it. I am talking about Red-Handed Doom. Red-Handed Doom doesn't take place in any of the actual established D&D settings. It just takes place in Elser Vale. A place. That's it. And that's okay. It's okay to say, my adventure takes place in the Molten Cay. It's just one island. This is the whole campaign. It's going to be on this island. That's fine. You don't have to make up a bunch of gods. You don't have to make up special currency. You don't have to make up any of this shit. Just enough to do the main things that you need to tell your story. That's it. That's all you need. Now, here's the thing. If you don't have to do all that stuff, what happens when you do? Right? So if I go to Dom and I say, hey, man, Eddie had a really rough time that fight. I think he's going to find religion. What kind of gods can he worship, man? Because, like, he's having an existential crisis here. And Dom says, just a second. And then in that moment, he comes up with a handful of gods that the hunters in his version of Monster Hunter might worship. And he says, well, there's three gods. There's the god of the hunt, and there's the god of the moon, and then there's the god of crafting. And then it's like, oh, that sounds cool. All right, I'll go with the god of the moon. Here's what you got to do. Write that shit down. Yep. If you just bullshit it into creation, like God himself creating life in the universe, write it down. Because it's real now, baby. You just made it real. So that's another cool thing about a homebrew campaign is something doesn't need to exist until it needs to exist. Oh, right? So that can be an incredibly fun experience because talking about the ownership of things, what if you turned around to your players and totally transparent, you said, you know what? I hadn't actually thought of that. What do you think some cool gods would be for these Monster Hunter characters to worship?
So in that moment, if Eddie came to me, I would say, like, okay, Eddie, what do you believe in? Like, what is something we wanna put effort into, and then I'll use that to as a spearhead.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. It's a beautiful experience. If you haven't done a fully organic like homebrew campaign before, it is a tremendous experience. It's wonderful. If you are flexible If you are like, no, this is my simulacrum, I have written like the best possible, or whatever that, Hobbit book is. This is the Bible of my world. I can't deviate from it. I can't change it. Everything is good. That's okay too. That's okay too. If you've already put in all the work and you know the world and you've memorized it and your players are asking about it and you're giving them the information, that's great. Do not turn your homebrew game into an opportunity to tell people about your world. They're here to play a game. They are not here to be lectured about the 500-page history of the elves that you wrote. That is not why they are here.
And
yeah.
Another thing too on that is that you might have your world and their world might be sacred for you, but like if players in this game make adjustments to your world, it doesn't take away from what you made.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you made is still there. And if you ever want to do another game inside your world, you can, maybe the thing that the player made is like really cool and you want to add it. Maybe that's added to your world now, and the next time you make a game inside just this homebrew world you made, that stuff is now real. Or maybe that campaign was just a whatever your, like, say your world name is your world 621, and then there's this game is taking place in your world 534.
Exactly.
I don't know.
It is okay to pull a multiverse card and be like, in my Pathfinder game, in my Golarion, there's red-skinned, blue-nosed Dungeons and Dragons hobgoblins. We don't got those Pathfinder hobgoblins. They don't exist in my world. This is how it is in my world. That's okay too. That is okay too. So here are the parallels now. Take notes as you build your adventure, as you build your world, as you run your game. Take notes. Will points out in chat, even if you don't stream, recording sessions can be very helpful for keeping notes. And that's very true. Because it doesn't hurt to be able to go back and see what did I fucking say when they asked about the different gods. I knew I came up with some really good stuff on the spot, but I can't remember what it was. You can always go back and listen to it. Or if a player misses a session, now you have it recorded. They could listen to the session or watch the session. If it's the GM view, you probably just want them to listen to the session. As you're taking notes, think about cool things. If you're like, oh my god, this fight I have planned is so cool, hold on to that. If you're excited about that, the players will probably be excited about that. Try to make that thing happen. If you're writing notes and you're like, actually, this sounds kind of lame, well, don't use it then. You're the guy you're coming up with it. If you don't like it, get rid of it. Problematic elements. If you're like, yeah, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be this thing, and then this is gonna happen. Oh, actually, that is, that might actually, yeah. I think they're gonna get. Some people are going to get pretty upset if we do that. So you know what? We're not going to do that. That's something that we maybe should have done more in Skull and Shackles. Anyways, so confusing parts. If you're like, yeah, so the god of death is also the god of life, and they're also the god of insanity, but they're also the god of babies. Anyways, they're the bad guy, but they're also a good guy, and then they're also maybe not either. And if you start to confuse yourself with your idea, it might not be a good idea. You might want to run it past some people. You want me to say, hey, I had this idea. Does this make sense? And then and if your friend's like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all, you might be like, yes, it didn't make sense to me either. Do you have any ideas for how I could get something like this in the game without, it being so confusing? So in the same way that you're reading someone else's adventure, pre-written adventure, and running into stuff, you might run into stuff with your own writing, with your own ideas. Do not be afraid to step away from your own work and really look at it objectively and say, you know what? Now that I look at this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let's see. Finally, if there's not enough detail in something, that's okay. It's homebrew. You can flesh it out later. What if you feel pressured to flesh it out on the spot? Well, let me tell you live in the year 2023. AI tools, baby. Random tables and generators all over the place. And when push comes to shove, stealing ideas from your favorite media. That's right. Even Matt Colville, that's one of his top advice. Steal things. So if they're like, well, hold on, like I need to know what was that bandit lord's name. There's random encounters, baby. You just type into Google random bandit lord names fantasy generator. Hit enter.
Or
You're gonna have the name.
or their name Kyle.
Or they're named Kyle. Right? And then
Mm-hmm.
they decide to take the bandit lord prisoner instead of killing him. You have no idea who this guy is, what he's about, or if it's even a guy. They pull off the mask, and it's a lady lizard folk. Now what do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what these random generators can help you with. And if you don't have the time to kind of come up with something, immediately just think of the last character on a show or movie, and that's who that character is. Like, honestly, I mean, it goes a long way. Everything is just made of tropes. Everything's just made of tropes. So just grab a trope, slap it on there, and just move on with your life. Same deal as before. Study the tone. You want to have a Viking game? Learn about Vikings. Watch Viking stuff. Play Viking game.
Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter
game. Monster Hunter game. You should probably play some Monster Hunter. Get an idea for what Monster Hunter's like. And then again, set limits for yourself. Know that this is your world and your story, and that at the end of the day, you're only really accountable to yourself. Don't stress yourself out. You don't have to publish a 500-page campaign book. You don't have to do that. And also, give yourself breaks. Don't push yourself so hard that you burn out on the campaign before the campaign even gets started. I don't have time, nor do I have the interest to teach anyone how to run a procedural game. But that is the other type of game that you could prep.
I would say for that, the biggest thing is similar to homebrew. Like, get like a good framework set up, and then from there have have your characters, have your players lift a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of what they want to do. And you remember, you only need to prep what they are getting involved with. At the time. And then if they got prepped for something, if you prepped for something because they were going there and they changed their mind, they didn't know what they were going to get to until they get there. You prepped something already. They change directions. They still end up at that castle you prepped. And now that castle that you prepped is in this part of the world.
Absolutely, the old switcheroo, the old shell game. Combine that with modern day tools. You on Foundry VTT, sign up for Moulinet. Moulinet give you access to all the maps, all the content that your Patreon subscriptions would give you access to in a searchable compendium on the fly. They go into a cave that you didn't know was there. Boop, boop, boop. Cave map. Whap. Make sure you have a nice fat compendium full of monsters. Random encounter tells you that there's 2 boulets in that cave. Womp womp. You drag over them with a quick insert. You're ready to go. Procedural game, baby.
Sometimes it's okay to just put up the marker tool and draw on a blank thing.
That's true too. In a procedural game, especially. There's a lot of theater of the mind going on in a procedural game.
I will say there's been times in Cyberpunk where they decided to go someplace, and I have no way I'm going to have a map of this thing. So
absolutely, yeah.
Keep in mind, there's a picture. Here's a picture. We're going to draw on this map.
So that brings us past time. I think we covered every angle here of prepping new campaign. From making sure you have a strong foundation outside of the game, making sure you have a strong group foundation before you start the game, and then making sure that you've done your due diligence to prepare the game itself. All right, so no vodcast next week, holidays, and then the following week we're going to have one last Extra Life event, 12 hours of Purple Kobolds. Lots of games starting on the server, lots of games being run on the server, lots of games besides Tabletop to play on the server. Holidays are coming up. You don't gotta be lonely. If you're looking for people to play games with online, ask around. I'm sure there's people that want to play some co-op and hang out. I know this time of year can get very busy, and for some people it can get kind of lonely. But that's all right. We've started to build this really nice community over on Discord, and don't be afraid to reach out and see if anybody is available for games moving forward. If you're able to help out or participate with Extra Life on December 2nd, hit me up. That would be great. And yeah, other than that, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and good luck prepping your campaigns.
Yep.
All right, sweet. See y'all next time.
All right, take care.